Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
Second-ranked Alabama opened as a 17-point favorite over the Florida Gators in the SEC championship game. The Tide, as a 17-point favorite, is the largest SEC championship game spread since 1995, when Florida, under Steve Spurrier, was a 24-point favorite over Arkansas. That worked out pretty well for the Gators, Rodney. They beat Houston Nutt and the Hogs 34-3. And with that, we say good evening, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Tider Insider TV. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris, WVUA 23 Sports Director. Our program presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock, which means we get to enjoy ice-cold Pepsi. Love that sound. Love that sound. And then love that taste. Pick up a great Pepsi product the next time you're at your local grocery store. You'll enjoy it as much as Rodney and I do. All right, Rod, the College Football Playoff Committee released its latest playoff rankings just a few minutes ago, and really as expected, Clemson, Alabama, the top two, Oklahoma, number 3, Iowa, 4, and barring an upset, these 4 teams could remain the same. The Iowa-Michigan State winner probably will be in, no doubt. Clemson, Alabama, and Oklahoma. Oklahoma doesn't play, so they're going to be in. Clemson and Alabama have to win. I think the one thing that could happen is, I think if it stays like this, the Big Ten championship winner could move to number 3. Okie can move to 4. You'd have a Clemson-Oklahoma rematch from a year ago, Alabama versus the Big Ten champ, and then potentially Alabama versus Oklahoma in the championship game.
I think 2 of those teams are going to lose.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, I do. I think Clemson will lose to North Carolina, and I think that Iowa will lose to Michigan State.
Yeah, I think Michigan State's going to win. But I think Michigan State could move to number 3 if they win.
Now, I understand it's kind of a risky pick with North Carolina, but I think they've got the defense to shut down Clemson, and I'm expecting that to happen.
The job Chiswick's done as a defensive coordinator at North Carolina. Of course, I know Auburn fans give him no credit for winning a national championship, but he's a pretty good football coach and has done a good job. Well, Rodney, Alabama kept itself at number 2 in the playoff rankings by beating Auburn on Saturday at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Now, Alabama was a 14-point favorite, and the Tide covered the point spread, winning by 16. Still, though, this was not a blowout by any means. Auburn played maybe its best game of the year, hung around, got a pass play that was reminiscent of 2 years ago against Georgia. Jason Smith caught this one, and this was a 6-point game early in the fourth quarter, but Alabama imposed its will. We know what Derrick Henry did. We'll talk more about that. Tide wins at 29-13.
Yeah, I really don't think it's much different than some of the games we've seen in the past when you've had a prohibitive favorite. Gary, tight first half. You know, the underdog played really well, which Auburn did in the first half in this particular game. But, you know, Alabama just flexed its muscles in the second half, and the things they did running the ball just showed that they were really the dominant team. And, you know, you really just wanted to get in this game and get out of it, survive, and advance. And that's what Alabama did.
And, you know, I said last week, Rodney, and, of course, Jen filled in for me here on Tider Insider TV, but I had said on the air that I thought the only place that Auburn had an advantage over Alabama was the place kicker. Even though Griffith had been hot, I thought Daniel Carlson, I still think he's probably the best kicker in the country, but Adam Griffith outkicked Daniel Carlson 5 field goals to 2. Griffith was 5 for 5, including a 50-yarder. Carlson missed a big one in the second quarter, going 2 for 3. And Adam Griffith, I know that wasn't his fault what happened 2 years ago, but it was sure sweet to see him have a game like that at that stadium.
I thought it was. I agree with you, certainly. I don't understand all the talk about that in terms of as it relates to him. That was a 57-yard field goal attempt. They just didn't cover it. But he did an outstanding job. I think it was a redemption of sorts for him with those 5 field goals, Gary. And it was big because, you know, without his 12 points in the first half, Alabama's in trouble. So those kicks were really big, gave Alabama a 12-6 lead at halftime. And I really think the kick in the second half that put Alabama up 22-13 was really what did it.
Probably play the game. And defensively, Auburn had some success running in the first half with Jovan Robinson. And I understand that tip touchdown counts, okay? It counts. But outside of that play in the second half, Alabama's defense completely shut Auburn down, Rod.
Well, Auburn had 90 yards rushing in the first half. They had 1 yard rushing in the second half. I think they only ran it 8 times. But Alabama dominated possession, running the football. And, again, I think that they showed in the second half why they're the dominant team, you know, in this particular game.
And real quickly, we got to move on to Kirby Smart, but Derrick Henry, 46 for 271, man.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he carried the load. He's a workhorse running back, Gary. And I thought that the the run at the end. It was good to see him get his touchdown in the game. And I think perception-wise, it's going to help him.
Yeah, I think he could be hoisting that Heisman a week from Saturday if he has a good game against Florida. Of course, more on Florida and the SEC championship game coming up. Rodney, a lot of coaching openings. We know about it in college football. Bama coaches being mentioned as possible replacements at some of these schools. And, of course, the big name right now, Kirby Smart, the Alabama defensive coordinator. He is a Georgia alum, and we are going to talk about that right now in terms of what might happen with him. Are we going to go to break? All right, let's go to Kirby Smart then. That's what I'm saying. Let's talk about Kirby Smart. He's been mentioned for Georgia, and he's an alum there. If he leaves, you can't blame him. It'd be a great opportunity for him. But, just your thoughts on all this.
Well, I mean, again, there's a lot of speculation going on right now. We don't know anything definite, but it does appear, according to even reports in Georgia, some of their better media members over there in terms of experience and so forth, they believe that Kirby's the next guy, and if he is, great for him. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity for him. Georgia's one of the best jobs in the country, Gary. The recruiting base that they have is fabulous. I mean, it offers everything a coach needs to be successful, and I think it's a great opportunity for anyone. And if it's Kirby Smart, good for him.
And, of course, Mario Cristobal being mentioned for the Miami job, but that's still pretty premature in regards to what they're going to do.
I don't think that's going to happen for him. I really don't. Now, I'm not sure that Mario Cristobal, believe it or not, is ready to go at this point. I think he's got some business here he wants to take care of, still building the offensive line. I do think he's going to be a head coaching candidate at some point for somebody, and I think he's got a chance to be a really good one. But, that job opening supposedly now on the Miami boards, they're talking about Mark Richt.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, he played quarterback there. I think he'd be a home run hire for the University of Miami. Still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama basketball has done something that it has not done in a while. And we'll tell you what it is coming up next on Tider Insider TV. Also, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. The information right there on the screen. Interact with TITV by giving us a call at 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us at TITV@WVUA23.com. Or you can reach us on Twitter using the hashtag TITV. We're right back after this. The Alabama men's basketball team showed some toughness this past weekend down in Orlando at the Advocare Invitational. The Tide beat number 20 Wichita State, coached by Greg Marshall, who turned Alabama down, 64-60. And then they followed that up on Sunday night with a huge win, 74-73 over number 17 Notre Dame, a team that went to the Elite Eight last year and should have beat Kentucky and went to the Final Four. Back-to-back wins over ranked teams for the first time since 2006. A.J. proving he just doesn't talk the talk. He's got the Tide walking the walk. Well, it's time now for our weekly Coach Speak segment brought to you by Med Center. Here now, Alabama head coach Nick Saban and Florida head man Jim McElwain talking about the matchup in the SEC championship game.
This is a very talented team. They're extremely well coached. Jim McElwain has done an outstanding job there. They've won 10 games this year. They're probably the best overall team that we've played against all year long. They have, a great defensive team, probably the highest ranked defensive team we faced all year long. From a national standpoint, they also do a great job in taking care of the ball and getting turnovers. They have a very positive turnover ratio. Very talented players on offense. The quarterback, Trayon Harris, is a dual threat kind of guy that can make plays passing or with his feet. Reminds me a lot of Blake in terms of his style of play.
We're getting ready to play a football team that arguably is the best football team in all of college football, and by all means is the best football program over the last probably 8 years of any football team or football organization or program there is. And historically, a program that understands how and believes.
Rodney, these two teams have played in the SEC championship game more than any other teams. Florida one more time than Alabama. They've played against each other a lot. Steve Spurrier, other than that one loss in 1992, had Alabama's number, had Gene Stallings' number. Then Dubose got a win in 99. Of course, Saban now has had good success against Florida, splitting the two SEC championship games, but winning a couple of regular season meetings. Jim McElwain, now the coach at Florida. Alabama's a big favorite, as we mentioned. How do you see this game playing out?
Well, I think when you look at it, Jim McElwain's done a fantastic job, and it hasn't been with offense, and he's an offensive coach. I mean, he's done it with defense. They've done a tremendous job on that side of the ball. Jeff Collins, their defensive coordinator, who came over from Mississippi State last year, Gary, he's got a lot of athletes to work with. You know, it's not been a lack of athletes that Florida struggled in the last couple of years, and they've got the most out of those guys on the defensive side of the ball. You know, they've got Jonathan Bullard's an outstanding defensive lineman, put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. He's got 5 or 6 sacks. He's got over 15 tackles for losses. Alex McAllister's another guy that really puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback. He's got 6 sacks. So they've got guys that can put pressure. They've got the corners. They've got Jalen Tabor. You remember him. Alabama recruited him really hard a couple of years ago and really broke Alabama's heart when he decided to go to Florida. And of course, Vernon Hargraves is the best in the country. And so they've got the secondary. They can cover. They can rush. So they do a fantastic job on the defensive side of the ball.
No doubt. Offensively, it's a different story. Since Will Grier went down, they had some success with Treon Harris early, but the last few games, I mean, they scored 9 points against Vanderbilt. They only had 13 in regulation against Florida Atlantic. They had 24 at South Carolina. Didn't score a point against Florida State, 2 points on defense. I mean, they're really struggling on offense.
And I think that's hurt their defense a little bit against Florida State, I think, because they could not generate anything offensively, that as the game wore on, you know, Florida State gained some momentum and had some opportunities against the defense that you really shouldn't count against the defense because of, you know, the ineptness of what the offense was in that particular game. But in 3 of the last 4 games, Gary, they've barely gotten over 250 yards of total offense.
Yep, been a struggle. Later on, our predictions on Saturday afternoon's matchup between the Tide and the Gators. And coming up next, your phone calls. That's right. We want to hear from you here on the program. 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at TITV@WVUA23.com or reach us on Twitter using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider Television. We'll return right after this break. As we talked about earlier, Florida and Alabama have dominated as far as appearances in the SEC championship game is concerned. Florida with 11, Alabama with 10, the Gators with 7 wins, Tide with 5. And as you see, LSU, Auburn, and Georgia just 5 appearances apiece. So it's not even close who the top 2 teams in the SEC championship game era have been. All right, Rodney, you ready to take some phone calls?
Sure.
Let's get to it. Fred is waiting right here in Tuscaloosa. How are you, Fred?
How you doing? How y'all gentlemen doing?
Doing great, Fred. Go ahead, my man.
I was calling to make one comment and another short question. The question, go ahead with the question. Should y'all think, I think he should, Henry win the Heisman, and what y'all think about that? And Coach Saban is my comment is, Coach Saban is one of the greatest coaches I ever seen, because he has guys that now that he was under him, now coaching against him as head coaches. So
we
what
got
y'all
you,
guys think
Fred.
about that?
All right, we'll start with Saban. Absolutely, he's in the conversation of greatest college head coach of all time. Right now, my money's still on Coach Bryant, but Coach Saban's not done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's certainly he's in the air, so to speak. He's certainly up there with Bryant, no question about that. And I think he's right. It is a lot like Coach Bryant. You know, Coach Bryant had all of his pupils out.
People wanted to hire him.
And he wore them out, too.
Of course, you found out. Coaching for Coach Bryant doesn't make you Coach Bryant. Same thing could be for Saban. As far as Henry, yeah, Fred, I think if he has a big game against Florida and Alabama wins, he's going to win the Heisman Trophy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. I think he needs to have a solid game against Florida. Alabama needs to win the game, and if he does, I mean, I really don't see how they can't give it to him.
Yeah, his numbers are up there with the greatest in the history of the SEC. We're talking about Herschel and Bo. Yep. I mean, he has been phenomenal, and if he polishes it off against Florida, I think he'll be polishing that Heisman.
What's Herschel's record? 1891, something like that, I believe.
And he's going to get it.
Yeah, he's at
1797.
He's certainly going to pass that. He's got 22 rushing touchdowns. 17 straight games
17
now?
straight games with a rushing touchdown. Phenomenal year. All right, let's move on. And it says Jason Brilliant. I think that you may be brilliant, Jason, but I think that's where you're calling from, right?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
What do you think Saban's going to do if he does lose both of his coordinators this year? Do you think he'll try to hire 2 more coordinators, or you think he may try something else.
Now, he's going to hire two if he loses two. I can promise you that. Go ahead, Rod.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And if you're asking me who it would be, I have no idea. I mean, he hasn't lost those two yet. But, if he does, we'll see what happens. But there's not going to be any shortage of candidates, that's for sure.
All right, let's go to Huntsville and talk to Chris. Welcome in, Chris, to TITV. How are you?
Thank you very much. First-time caller. Thank you for taking my call.
Glad to have you.
My comment is everyone's talking about strength of schedule. What I would like to talk about is the quality of losses between Alabama, Michigan State, and Oklahoma. And I wanted to get your input on that.
Yeah.
Well, I think Alabama has the best loss. I think Ole Miss is a better loss than Nebraska. And who was the
Clearly, they lost to Texas.
Yeah,
Oklahoma
and then
lost
Oklahoma
to
lost to Texas, so it's not even close in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's not. That's not even really a conversation. I mean, I think that clearly Alabama has the best loss.
Now, how other people see it, we do not know. All right, we're going to take a break on the program. When we come back, more of your phone calls, emails, and some tweets as well if you want to get through to us. Good phone calls so far. We'll have more interaction, discussion, and debate when TITV returns right after this timeout. Welcome back to Tider Insider TV alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Let's get right back to the phones. Our next caller is in Northport, and it's Wolfgang. Van Halen or Mozart? Go ahead, Wolfgang. You with us? He must have had to go play guitar or piano. I don't know which one. Wants to know if North Carolina beats Clemson, will the committee put two Big Ten teams in? That's a good question. I mean, if Clemson were to go down, I guess there could be a thought process that you put the winner of the Big Ten championship game. And, of course, Ohio State would be the other team that he's talking about. I don't think so, but nothing surprises me, really.
Again, who knows? It really depends on how everything else plays out. You can't just really necessarily predict in terms of those two games. But, I mean, it's possible they could.
All right. Thanks for the phone call there, Wolfgang, even though you didn't hang around to talk to us. Let's go to Hansville and talk to Danny. I bet Danny's on the line. Aren't you, Danny?
Yes.
What's going on, my man?
Just wondering, Kenyon Drake being hurt and everything, why are we not playing Scarborough? He's the same size back as.
All right, Danny. Well, we get this question every week, and all I can tell you is I think the coaching staff knows what they're doing. I think, obviously, Damian Harris right now is the number 2 back if Drake doesn't come back. But clearly on Saturday, they trusted one running back in that second half, and that was Derrick Henry. He had 30 carries, 46 for the game. He held up well. I do think Coach Saban wants to try to get another back in, whether it's Kenyon Drake or somebody else, but they're going to take the best. They're going to play the best guy.
And I think he said it perfectly. He explained it. He said, in games like that, it's very difficult to make a change, and I think that's why you're not seeing the other guys really play that much.
All right, we're going to get another call. Nate in Tuscaloosa. Go fast, Nate.
Yeah, we all have been wondering for many years why they always give the Heisman Trophy out before the end of the season.
Well, now, Nate, I've got to. If you're on the line, I'm going to try to understand what you're saying. It's going to be given out a week from Saturday. Every game is going to have been played other than the bowl games and the championship games in the playoff. So, are you still there? I mean,
that after the Heisman is given out, the one who wins the Heisman, if they're playing for the national championship, they don't have a chance to really show what they can do because it seems like they're lax.
Well, they have all season, though. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I like giving it away after the regular season's completed because some players are going to play in bowl games and play in national championship games, and some are not.
And I think also what he's saying is sometimes they haven't had very good performance. Gino Torretta,
right,
for example. There's been a lot of others that when, they've won the Heisman, all of a sudden they go out and flop the next game. Well, Pat Sullivan won the Heisman Trophy, and 2 days later, Alabama annihilated him, 31-7. But Mark Ingram had an outstanding game against Texas. He rushed for over 100 yards.
Hey, I see what you're saying, what his point is, but I like doing it when they do it. I mean, if the guy's named and he has a bad bowl game, he does. But that shouldn't detract from the season that he had.
I agree.
So, all right, what are we doing, Kayla? All right, let's take an email. And this is going to be from James in Spanish Fort. Your thoughts on Mark Richt getting fired, Rodney? And I'm disappointed. I thought the guy was a good football coach and a great individual, but they want some championships over there in Athens. He hadn't won one in 10 years.
Here's what I think they're saying. They're saying winning 10 games a year and playing for the SEC championship game every 3 years isn't good enough. So if that's what you're saying, then it seems like to me that, and if you're going to fire him, you're going to hire an unproven coach.
We'll see what they do. You're right. Kirby Smart has never been a head coach at any level. All right, when we come back, who do we think will win the SEC championship game? Well, we will have our predictions on Alabama and Florida. TITV will return right after this break. All right, if you notice, once again this week, our beautiful dress shirts are provided by the Locker Room on the University Boulevard in Tuscaloosa on the Strip, a Tuscaloosa tradition since 1964 and home of the original elephant wear. Now, the great thing about the Locker Room is if you go out in person and see Alex and Rush and the staff, they are going to help you get suited in whatever it is you want to buy, including original elephant wear, but you can also shop online at locker-room.biz. So you can get it in person or you can get it online. The highest quality men's clothing available and women's clothing as well at the Locker Room in Tuscaloosa. Go by and see them and say you heard about it on TITV. All right, Rodney, it's time for our picks. As always, we start with you, Alabama versus Florida SEC championship game.
What a job Jim McElwain has done in his first year. Nobody really predicted that they would be in this situation. And not only that, I mean, he lost his quarterback earlier in the year and had to go to Treon Harris, who is a fine player and has done an excellent job under the circumstances. And but it's all about defense for Florida, and I think they're going to really challenge Alabama. Alabama has to really protect the ball offensively. Don't give Florida anything. And I just think Alabama's too much for the Gators, 24-13.
I think you're being a little optimistic on the 13 for Florida. I'm with you. I like their defense. I think it's championship caliber. But when Will Grier went out, they had some success for a while. But then I think defense has picked up. The Treon Harris really just can't throw the ball down the field. And they've started taking away the running game. Taylor hasn't been as effective. If Florida can't score against Florida State, they can only get 9 against Vandy. They only get 13 in regulation against Florida Atlantic. Rodney, I don't think they score at all against Alabama.
Wow.
I'm picking it a shutout, 27-0.
No.
I think
last week everybody was predicting a blowout. Last week I knew Auburn would play their best game. Florida would play a better game.
I think they'll play a good game defensively. I just think offensively they do not have it. That is going to do it for the program. That's the great thing about it. We'll find out on Saturday, won't we?
I hope you're right.
And for Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching TITV. And we will see you again next week when we recap the SEC championship game and hopefully talk about Alabama moving on to the college football playoff. Have a great night, everybody.